This week in Doctor Who Series 12 we're going to be talking bad dreams and character development, as I am of course going to be taking a look at the latest episode of the series, being Can You Hear Me, as written by Charlene James. Now, as per usual with the 13th Doctor adventures, I kind of went into this story not really knowing anything of what was going to happen. I didn't really read the synopsis beforehand. I certainly didn't go out looking for different elements that could possibly be in this story. I went in with no expectations and came out of the other side rather happy. I think it is nice to see a brand new writing credit for Doctor Who. That is one of the main positives that I did take from this story, especially from before watching it. I was just happy to see a new writer in Doctor Who sort of producing something new and arguably putting their ideas into the Doctor Who universe. It's nice to have variety and something a little bit different, and this story definitely provides some of that. As per usual with Doctor Who Series 12, I have reviewed all of the episodes so far this series beforehand, so take a look at all of those reviews if you haven't already, where I go into each individual story, give my opinions of what I liked and disliked. And naturally, if you're a fan of the 13th Doctor, then why not check out my review of the Character Options 13th Doctor TARDIS. It's just been released recently, I do believe this week, that is already up. And also do stay tuned on the Host Productions, as coming very soon there will be a review of Sophie Aldred's new book, being At Childhood's End, which is of course seeing the return of Ace meeting the 13th Doctor. I'm currently reading it at the minute and it is a really brilliant read. It's a nice blend between classic series and new series Doctor Who, and so far it has been a lot of fun, so do stay tuned for that review coming in the next few weeks. This review has started off with quite a few plugs, but not gonna lie, I've done quite a few reviews recently and I want to advertise them to you all, as it may be something that you are interested in, because at the end of the day this channel is full of variety and I like to keep that up as much as possible, because more to Doctor Who than just the TV show itself, as the many pieces of merchandise and products do of course show. So starting off this review by taking a look at one of the more controversial elements of this story that I kind of wanted to get out of the way. I think I did a similar thing last week with Praxius. This episode we do of course have the inclusion of a mental health aspect, which was something that I didn't expect at all. I thought we were going to have a story where we have this sort of creature that's all powerful, the bald guy with the tattoos, and a whole idea of dreams or something. That's all I really knew going into this story. I didn't expect what we got. I certainly didn't expect the character development with Yaz, which personally I think's brilliant. Finally, we have some character development for Yaz that is substantial and good and makes her feel like a real human. If only this character development came last season, where we had absolutely none of it. I kind of feel like this story has put more emotion into Yaz as a character, and it makes her feel a bit more like a person that people can relate to, which is something for me I've not had for the vast majority of episodes that she's appeared in so far. Yes, Series 12 has developed her as a person, she's had more to contribute, but a story such as this, delving into her history ever so slightly, has kind of uncovered an aspect of the character that I really didn't expect. However, I'm kind of glad that has been included. Of course, this story did have a few other mental health elements in there, not just relating to Yaz, which I will be getting onto in a second. However, I think that the Yaz element of this story really was well written. I thought the whole idea with the police officer and the idea of the bet, the £50 or the 50p, was a lovely way of visualising the idea of mental health, and I love the idea. I do believe the police officer described it as you are living in a moment and you kind of can't see the way out of that moment, and you feel like everything is coming to an end, there is nobody to help you, and you feel helpless. And she was trying to get Yaz to see there is light at the end of the tunnel, essentially. I love the way that that was visualised throughout the story, her meeting her of course 3 years later. It was a lovely, well written piece that, to be quite honest, I related to quite a lot, and it was nice to see that presented within Doctor Who in a way that wasn't too on the nose. I think it was nice, it was emotional, and to be quite honest, I think this episode could have actually been entirely focused around that concept of mental health with Yaz. I think it would have been really cool if this alien from out of space kind of plucked Yaz out of the TARDIS, because she's been travelling in time, she's naturally causing attention because of that, and basically this character, this villain, maybe Zellin, is using her and manipulating her, and we get to delve into her past, as that is a way to develop her as a person. And to be honest, this episode has kind of made my appreciation of Yaz grow quite a lot more compared to what it was in previous weeks. The other aspects of this story story relating to mental health were a little bit disjointed, it has to be said. Of course we have Ryan's friend as well. It is nice to see kind of a versatility in gender, of course seeing that mental health can affect all genders, of course, and all humans. It's nice to have that representation in there. However, we didn't really see much of the male character side of it, sadly. It seemed to be focused around Yaz. Understandably, of course, because Yaz is a companion and the friend of Ryan isn't a key focus of the series, which I fully understand. It was nice to see it included, however, I didn't particularly find it too relevant. Yeah, overall for that part of the story, I liked it. It was good. It was nice to see it included. Then we move on to the other controversial moment of this story, which is the cancer stuff relating to Bradley Bush's character of Graham. First of all, it's nice to see it referenced, because so far this series we had a reference in Spyfall, and that has been basically it. And I've had this inkling since the very beginning that basically we're going to go on all of these adventures with Graham in the TARDIS. He's going to develop, he's going to overcome his sad losing of Grace, which we did get to see a return to in this story as well. And then by the very end of it, facing all of these monsters and villains, possibly even saving the odd planet or two, he will be struck down by an everyday illness that humans get. He's not survived. I had this gut feeling since the very beginning, and considering that we are nearing the end of the series now, and we're starting to see this element coming back in, suggesting something for the future. Could it be foreshadowing the series finale? Who knows? But we did have that scene at the very end, which basically, some people like it, again, some people hate it. Once again, it was nice to see it addressed. However, I understood the writer's intentions. I understood the whole idea of why it was done. However, I don't think from the Doctor's side of things it was presented too well. I love the idea of the Doctor being socially awkward, and I think that some of those traits are very clear within the 13th Doctor. However, the way that she approached it in this story didn't really seem right. People will have different opinions, and I'm kind of teetering between both of them. I think I'm kind of leaning. Originally, when I first watched this story, I thought it was completely out of character and awful. Upon second watch, having reflected on the original viewing, I kind of grown to understand it a bit more. However, I just think it wasn't too well handled. It could have been handled a lot better than it was. I think that was solely down to the lines of the 13th Doctor, and perhaps how Jodie maybe acted it as well, which again was probably completely unintentional, but it seemed just a little bit lacking in care almost. However, there was a quote that, once again, relating back to that idea of Graham dying at the end of the series, she says something like lines of, "think of something that I should have said," which I feel like that is going to be a line that again will be referred back to at the end of the series, maybe when Graham is dead, and the 13th Doctor then realises that thing that she should have said, and I maybe feel that is Chris Chibnall's contribution to this story, because he does also have a writing credit for this episode. So now that is out of the way, taking a look at the actual story itself, because I wanted to take a look at those two key things beforehand, because they have grabbed the audience, it seems, the most, one of which I think worked quite well, and the other not so well. Talking about Ryan, because he also had some development. Yay! I love the fact that we've gone to see him with his lads back at home. Of course, we did get to see him with his friends in the early half of Spyfall, and I've come to realise that I think Tosin Cole is a lot better when he's around his lads, when he's around his mates, when he's in his normal habitat. He feels a lot more like a human being, and I think especially that moment when he meets his friend at the door and he goes, "I've got chips," I thought that was very real, and it was the most natural dialogue that I've seen Tosin deliver pretty much throughout the majority of his time on Doctor Who so far. It felt a bit better and a bit more natural, and for that reason I kind of wish that Yaz was a part of the gang that he had prior to meeting the Doctor, because I kind of feel like that would have benefited Tosin's portrayal as Ryan more than we've got so far. If anything, he seems more detached from the TARDIS team compared to the other companions, so he was good. I liked his contribution to the story. I loved the idea of him talking to his friend once again about his problems. Yaz, as I've already covered, was decent. Graham, he had a few nice quirky one-liners in there. He was probably once again one of the highlights of the TARDIS team, but by far the highlight for me was Yaz. So yeah, well done Mandip Gill, a brilliant performance. Also her sister, I do believe called Sonia, The actress for Sonia, I thought that she was really good in this story. Although she was in it very, very briefly, I thought that it was nice. I thought that she very clearly has a loving relationship to Yaz. It was a tight bond, and even though it was a brief scene, I thought that she portrayed it very, very well, and I would love to see her back at some point. Maybe perhaps when one of the companions of the series eventually pegs it, probably at the end of the series, maybe bring Sonia on, who knows, or maybe cut down the TARDIS team a little bit, because it's already too big as it is. Of course, Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor, she had a few nice moments, once again slipping back maybe into the more Series 11 style of 13th Doctor, delivering the odd bit of exposition here and there, which was okay. It wasn't as obvious as within Series 11, but I thought she was again bearable. She was kind of that not so good aspect of the 11th Doctor, kind of, because there's a few stories that Matt Smith excels in. There's also a few stories where he's just a bit stupid and daft. She kind of fell into that category for me, this story. She was good, she was bearable, which is something of which that I can't say for some of the Series 11 stories. However, I was expecting something a bit more ooh with her. That scene at the end as well with Graham, one of the most notable moments. And the part with Zellin was good. I thought her interactions were cool there. I thought it was quite calm and collected. But again, I was expecting more. Whilst we're on to characters, another additional credit, Ian Gelder, Zellin. Phenomenal. He's really, really good. He felt like a threat, he felt powerful, and he felt like somebody that could beat the 13th Doctor. I loved the fact that he was looking down on her, and he seemed like a worthy opponent. And it's just a shame that he was relegated to a role that, yes, he was a god within the actual story, but I feel like Ian Gelder deserves to be a reoccurring monster god character. I feel like he deserves to be the Valeyard, or the Celestial Toymaker. I feel like he deserves a writing credit such as that, as a character that is known throughout Doctor Who history, rather than a one-off. I feel like perhaps a wasted opportunity. Of course he is as well the voice of the rag things from the Ghost Monument, probably that's just a coincidence, but yeah, it was good. I genuinely liked him. He, as I say, felt like a threat, and he was a worthy opponent. The other female character, I can't remember her name, less so. I didn't really feel too much around her. She was kind of just there, and yeah, didn't really make me feel anything. But Zellin was good, very good. Now talking about plot, this episode, as I've already discussed, going through pretty much the vast majority of the main half of the cast, is very character based. It's nice to see that we are going beyond just the outline of the characters, we are delving a little bit deeper, especially in the case of Yaz. The whole idea of dreams is brilliant, it's a great thing to use in Doctor Who, it's a great way to generate scaremongering, especially with the younger audience. I love the scene where Zellin lurks over the child in the bed, which sounds really odd out of context, but within Doctor Who, it works very well as a scaremongering idea. I imagine children having nightmares over that, or it's great, because Doctor Who should scare fans. It's like the Weeping Angels, it's like the Daleks to some extent as well. It should generate a form of fear, which this story, I imagine for that younger audience, would have definitely done that. I love the whole idea of the finger going into the ear, because it's bizarre and stupid, and it's Doctor Who, and I could imagine that working in any format really. I can imagine it within a Big Finish audio drama, I could imagine it within a book. It was one of those things that is typically Doctor Who, but also a really science fiction way of delivering that concept of the dreams and him physically going into that person's head. It's much better than it just being off screen, because sometimes it's nice to have a visual thing, and I think the finger, especially the clear one with the black fluid going into it from the person's mind, it was a lovely way of visualising those dark thoughts of the mental health coming out of that person's head and essentially being made into something real. We did of course also have the Aleppo sequences at the very beginning, which were made a little bit more prominent in the later half. I like the fact that we returned to it, because given by the midpoint I was kind of thinking, what is the point of the Aleppo stuff? And to an extent I kind of feel like the story could have been jigged around a bit to completely avoid the Aleppo stuff. It was alright. The actress who played the young character that was in the hospital, I thought that she was very good, and once again made the monster feel like a threat. She acted in a way that generally showed a lot of fear, which is very, very good, and it felt real. However, I think it just overall, from a plot perspective, I would have much rather the Aleppo stuff being ripped out entirely, and we have more focus on Yaz. Maybe Yaz and Ryan and that relationship of the bad thoughts that we have in modern day, as opposed to bringing the history stuff into it, had they decided to go down that more Yaz and Ryan focused route, as opposed to the wider stuff and making kind of the Doctor need to go off and do something just to waste a little bit of time essentially. As I say, I felt like that part could have been took out and we could have focused more on the companions instead, because we need that. Something that I did also mention on Twitter is the set design of the spaceship. Doctor Who has come so far in the last few years because that spaceship setup was brilliant. It looked like it was something from a high-budget sci-fi film, and I thought it looked very, very cool, very modern. I loved the characters in it, kind of with the sort of shackles being tied to the ceiling. I thought that was quite cool. I also love the whole idea of the Doctor thinking that she's outsmarted Zellin, and then actually he has outsmarted her and predicted her move. That was very cool, also relating back to that whole idea of playing with everyone's thoughts that Zellin did, of course, do throughout the story. However, I found myself for the second week in a row thinking that the story has suggested something which would have arguably been a much better route to go down. Last week we had the idea of the Doctor referencing Autons, which I think would have been a much better way to take Praxeus, Autons or Sea Devils please, as opposed to the thing that we got. And see, I mentioned in the last review, I'm going on a little bit of a sidetrack, I mentioned in the last review that in a few months I will probably fail to remember the key aspects of the plot of Praxeus. Thinking now in my head, I'm currently struggling to remember said parts of the plot, and it's only a week later, so I kind of proved my point when it comes to that story from my perspective. It's not stood out to me. However, we have this time, of course, the reference to the Celestial Toymaker, which I believe somebody said online that that is the first time the Celestial Toymaker has been referenced to on TV for a long, long time. And imagine Zellin. Imagine Zellin not being called Zellin, but put in a colourful costume with his little hat on, and imagine Ian Gelder as the Celestial Toymaker. He is using people's dreams. He's moved off the whole idea of toys, so to speak, because in this day and age, toys, especially from a child's perspective, seem to be taken over essentially by iPhones and social media and internet and digital technology, so it would make sense for the Celestial Toymaker to do the same, to move away from practical methods such as toys and move into dreams and mental stuff. It would have worked so well if the Toymaker came back and he's became more versatile. This story does have the Toymaker written all over it, and once again I perhaps maybe feel like that reference in this story may have been a suggestion to a original idea for this script that got written out within an early draft and changed to put this Zellin character in place. I might just be saying that because I'm a classic series fan and occasionally here and there I like a little bit of fan service. However, something like that, it could have done it, and it arguably, in my opinion, would have been much better, and it would have been a worthy return for the Toymaker as well, since his last appearance, I do believe, would have been within the 8th Doctor era, within a companion chronicle, and of course with the 6th Doctor in the Nightmare Fair. Big Finish have done it. Bring him back, please. He's good. I do believe he also had a comic with the 12th Doctor as well. He has potential, as those many appearances have shown, but the TV show hasn't done it yet. We did also have that animation segment, which, not gonna lie, I thought was just an artsy way to deliver a lot of exposition within a short period of time. It was a nice distraction, it worked, I suppose, it was unique, it was an interesting design choice. I don't think it's happened much within Doctor Who. However, of course, at the end of the day, it was just for the time-saving idea to deliver a lot of exposition quite quickly. There was also, of course, a reference to the Timeless Child within the dream sequence, which I'm presuming I'm going to give a little bit of a theory here, but we of course have the female character that is the partner of Zellin, trapped between the two planets, and she was in another realm at the time. I have a feeling that that other realm might be related to the Kazavin in Spyfall, and maybe that master, the Dewan master, is also from an alternative dimension, along with the Ruth Doctor, where all of which of this Timeless Child concept has came from, basically suggesting that there is an alternative timeline with the 13th Doctor in another body. However, things are running differently, and perhaps Zellin is a god from that other realm, and perhaps the other character, the female version of Zellin, I don't know her name, she's maybe been trapped in that other dimension with the Sacha Dhawan Master, and arguably where the other Doctor came from, because especially with the relation to the Timeless Child stuff in this story, and the fact that Zellin did the finger thing and it went in her ear, that shows to me intention that there's something further in the plot in the future that perhaps could return to the aspects of this story within the series finale, or perhaps beyond. Who knows? I'm trying not to focus on it too much, because I would much rather have stories that are stories in their own right, rather than relying upon plot arcs, because we do not want a repeat of Series 6, because I don't like Series 6, I avoid it like the plague. And one final little thing that I did also think when rewatching this episode, it felt a bit like a Big Finish box set, because we have the return of Grace, which I thought was an unusual choice, especially in the very small cameo that she got. And then we had the dregs in there as well, which nobody seems to be talking about on Twitter. I think it might just be because nobody cares. But I thought the dregs returning, once again, could that be a clue? Who knows? I'm looking into it too much. But that is good, because it shows I'm actually thinking about it, which is far more, as I said, than the last series did. And who knows, maybe the fact that Grace is back within that small little flashbacky dream sequence might be because she's in another story and they've recorded it within the same block. Who knows? What I do know, however, is it is pretty much the end of the review, therefore it is of course time to take a look at the Doctor Who Series 12 ranking. Yay! I feel like I should have a theme tune for this. I'm not gonna lie, I should have actually thought about this beforehand. I've not actually looked at where I would put this episode on the list yet. Of course, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror is at number 1, Spyfall Part 1 is at number 2, Fugitive of the Judoon is at number 3, Spyfall Part 1 is at number 4, Orphan 55 is at number 5, and number 6 is Praxeus. Now this episode is definitely, in my opinion, better than Praxeus, so we can safely assume that it is not going to be at the bottom. I really need to come up with a more high-tech way of doing this. But then again, this channel works on a budget, so... And therefore, with the inclusion of Can You Hear Me, and the things are falling off. And therefore, with the inclusion of Can You Hear Me, I've in fact put it at number 5, so above Orphan 55 and Praxeus. However, I kind of don't think it hit the same enjoyment level as Spyfall Part 1. I would go back willingly and watch that story again, very much like how I would do with Can You Hear Me, but not as much. It's kind of an episode that I feel I would watch again, however not as much as Spyfall. It didn't have that welcoming factor that that story had. So yeah, that is the overall ranking for this series so far. Only 3 episodes left. What is the rest of the series going to contain? Of course, we have the Frankenstein story coming up very soon, and then we have the Cyberman series finale, which the design, of course, has just been released for that, which look rather cool, but we'll talk about that, of course, when that does, of course, happen in a few weeks' time. So yeah, what did you think of this story? I imagine, oh, before we do that, actually, you may have noticed the eagle-eyed amongst you. I've included a few additional illustrations, including a bird, some plastic, the man with the bald, Zellin, that's his name, bald man with the tattoos, and a rather... We don't talk about that Judoon because it looks weird. Even I'm saying it looks weird. It's atrocious, but we ignore that. I tried my best. It's been a long day, okay? Yeah, we've added more illustrations. Probably a Cyberman will be joining it in a few weeks, and maybe even Mary Shelley. Who knows? And eventually we'll have a lovely collage of all of the key characters from this series of Doctor Who. Yay! So as I was saying just before, I went on a little bit of a sidetrack. Of course, naturally, why not leave in the comments section below your opinion of this story? I imagine this episode may provoke a few opinions. Some may like it, some people may dislike it. Either way, please be respecting of people's opinions. Leave them in the comment section below. Be incredibly interested to see what you thought of this story. And do, of course, stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who reviews relating to the 13th Doctor each and every week, along with all the other Doctor Who stuff that I do, of course, do on this channel. And of course, have a nice day or evening whenever you're watching this, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now.